Welcome to the Mississippi Center for Justice. We are a nonprofit public interest law firm whose mission is to advance racial and economic justice. We have hosted over 2,500 law student volunteers over the past decade or more. Thank you for donating your time to assist our clients in the work that we do. The context for our work comes from competing visions about our nation. Is America a nation of makers and takers, or a nation of privilege and inequality? Are we a land of opportunity, or a land where opportunity is not equal? And does success depend upon hard work alone, or on social advantages of race, gender, and class? Finally, does the duty to secure opportunity rest on the individual to get it for himself, or the rule of law to ensure opportunity is equal? We're talking here about values in policy, not politics. We are nonpartisan on politics, but we have a clear view on values. We value the role of law in ensuring equal opportunity for all Americans. How are these values expressed in settings where power and discrimination are in play? For example, the Black Lives Matter movement. Here, police use racial profiling and lethal force against people of color, in particular African Americans. We've seen the distrust grow of the criminal justice system to deal with police who kill black teenagers. And that is in part from the evidence uncovered by the criminal justice reform movement, the efforts to combat mass incarceration, or the new Jim Crow, as Michelle Alexander terms it, in her book that describes discriminatory laws and sentencing practices that disproportionately punish people of color. And connected to that is the increasing militarization of the police, which we saw responding to demonstrations in the Black Lives Matter movement. Which vision of America do we see reflected in these trends? A level playing field, or a nation of privilege and inequality? This conversation is not something new in America. Decades before Trayvon Martin, there was Emmett Till, an African American teen falsely accused of sexual advances by a white woman, who was murdered in Money, Mississippi by white vigilantes. His funeral and the acquittal of his killers by an all-white jury helped to spur the modern civil rights movement.
At a church on the south side of Chicago, Emmett Till's mutilated body would be on display for all to see.
It was on a Sunday afternoon. I won't ever forget, it was a Sunday afternoon. The church was very calm. The line was very orderly. I thought that pretty soon the crowd would die down. It looked like all of Chicago was there.
Well, they brought the children with them because Emmett was 14 years old, and they wanted the younger kids to see what happened to Emmett. They were mad. They were angry.
Let's now shift from racial to economic justice for a moment. After Wall Street crashed our economy in 2008, the Occupy movement rose up to challenge the widening wealth gap between Wall Street and Main Street. We continued to hear a lot about this in the 2016 Democratic primary from Senator Bernie Sanders, and we heard more about it last year during the debate on tax reform. How wide is the modern income gap? Here is how Americans in 2011 estimated the actual income distribution between the wealthiest 20% and the rest of the country. It's about 60%. Here's how Americans would prefer our society's income to be distributed. The wealthiest would have about 30 to 35%. And here is how American income actually is distributed as of that date. The wealthiest 20% have almost 85% of the wealth. You can't even see the portion indicating the poorest 20%. It's literally shoved into the margin. See the red arrow? These are our clients. This conversation also goes back a long way in American history. Let's listen to a Southern governor in 1935, 6 years after the 1929 Wall Street crash.
According to the tables which we have assembled, it is our estimate that 4% of the American people own 85% of the wealth of America, and that over 70% of the people of America don't own enough to pay the debts that they owe. How many men ever went to a barbecue and would let one man take off the table what's intended for 9/10 of the people to eat? The only way you'll ever be able to feed the balance of the people is to make that man come back and bring back some of that grub he ain't got no business with.
Now, does this persistent income disparity suggest a level playing field or a nation of privilege and inequality? What is the most extreme version of privilege and inequality? It's slavery, isn't it? In this 1860 map, the highest percentage of slave population per county is the darkest shade. It's along the Mississippi River in the Mississippi Delta. And 7 generations later, the racial disparities in income tied to that privilege and inequality remain embedded in the Delta. For whites, the highest median income. For blacks, the lowest median income. Again, we ask, does this suggest a level playing field or a nation of privilege and inequality? Also, what does it suggest about how powerfully privilege and inequality can embed themselves into institutions, markets, and social structure? Our organization, the Mississippi Center for Justice, was founded in 2003 in Jackson by Mississippi civil rights veterans to continue the unfinished business of the civil rights movement. In 2005, we added a Biloxi office to respond to Hurricane Katrina and other disasters. In 2011, we opened a Delta office in Indianola to focus upon education. We imagine a Mississippi that is a social justice state, where everyone can afford health care, obtain a quality education, access fair credit, secure affordable housing. In short, where people can live without the barriers of racism, discrimination, and poverty. Here is our board of directors, our staff in Jackson, and our teams in Biloxi and Indianola. Here are a few highlights of our work over the past 15 years for you to take a look at. By the way, PLADS stands for Poverty Level Aged and Disabled. There were 40,000 people whose health benefits we got restored through a case. Here's how we work with others. We prefer to work in coalition with allies. Some of our allies are national organizations, like our national affiliate, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. We also work with law schools like yours and national law firms, and even in some cases, corporate law departments. Here is a list and brief recap of our campaigns: economic justice, education, healthcare, housing, and disaster response. Some of our recent work includes a legal challenge to HB 1523, Mississippi's LGBT discrimination law. We blocked enforcement of the law for a year until the decision was overturned by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. We've handled a large number of requests for service for expungement and assisted over 100 people in getting their records expunged. We have an impact case to challenge Mississippi's 1890 Jim Crow era Constitution that imposes a lifetime voting ban on those convicted of specific crimes. In housing, we challenged the city's zoning action that would have eliminated about 1,500 apartments, largely occupied by people of color, in a white bedroom community outside of Jackson. In a moment, we'll brief you on the tracks of your work for the upcoming week. For now, we want to again thank you for volunteering with us.